play, and that's why we've got these guys with us. Brian Windhorst, Tim Bontemps ready to go. Jay Will's going to stop by soon. Adrian Wojnarowski is with us as well. And look at the ticker. There's Woj, and here's the ticker. Now, T-minus 9 hours, 59 minutes, and counting until we start with the Woj bombs and free agency begins. And let's start with the Woj bombs from last night. DeJounte Murray, all-star guard, heading to Atlanta to team up with Trae Young. The Hawks are sending Danilo Gallinari and 3 first-round picks back to San Antonio. Meanwhile, 3-time All-Star Bradley Beal is now an unrestricted free agent after declining his option for next season. He could sign a max deal for 5 years and nearly $250 million if he stays in D.C. And lastly, 10-time All-Star James Harden declines his $47.3 million option with the Sixers, and he is now an unrestricted free agent. And that's where we start with Woj. Woj, what should we make of this move from Harden?
Ryan, it's really an attempt by Harden to try to give Philadelphia the tools to go out and improve this Sixers team. It allows them to use their full mid-level exception at $10.5 million, a biannual exception that starts at $4 million, and also make some trades. And so I think for James Harden and the Sixers, you'll see them, they can start talking now at 6 o'clock Eastern. And listen, he's going to be back in Philadelphia. They'll work out the terms of a deal. But what Harden has really talked to the Sixers about was trying to do what he could to allow Daryl Morey and Elton Brand and their front office to go out and surround he and Joel Embiid with the kind of players and the kind of toughness, physical toughness, mental toughness that they felt they lacked in the playoffs last year. They want to address that now in free agency.
All right, showing Philly the brotherly love. And, that's all we wanted in Philly. We wanted a Harden who wanted to be there, and maybe he's showing that, Wendy, by doing this. What do you make of this move from Harden?
The standard that he had of the last 2 teams that he was on, let's just say that it wasn't difficult to surpass that. But let's be fair here. He did not have to opt out of this contract. It was in his rights to say, I will make $47 million next year. Russell Westbrook had the same option and said, I will take my $47 million. So Harden willing to do this kind of opens the door to them to replenish the depth that they lost when they traded for him. Remember, they didn't just trade for Ben Simmons. They also lost Andre Drummond. They also lost Seth Curry in that deal. So this opens up these options, and I don't think Philly will be done. We are hearing a lot about, Tobias Harris in the trade market. So even after Philly looks at addressing some holes in free agency that this new contract for Harden opens, it wouldn't surprise me if they look to do more work on their roster to build more around Harden and Embiid.
That's incredible. And for Sixers fans this morning, it's thrilling to think about the hope here. But Harden, I have to ask, a lot of it, Tim, has been with Harden. Is he more focused on himself or winning a title? Do you think he's more focused on winning a title than he's been in years past?
Well, I don't know if he's more focused or not, but I think when you look at this decision, he had the option to have this money come over a period of years, right? This wasn't James Harden getting a max contract like we've talked about in the past with him. He was going to get a certain amount of money over a certain period of time. Now, by making this decision, he allows the Sixers to better build a team that has a chance to win around him. So, yeah, like Brian said, he could have opted into this $47 million and gotten maybe less money over the next couple of years. But they would have had to make moves to go get, say, a PJ Tucker, to add other pieces of this roster over the next couple of days to make the Sixers into a potential championship team in the East. But by doing this, he has, to your point, given the Sixers the best path to having the best possible team around him. And to your point, if he can actually get the Sixers over the top this year, it could really change a lot of things.
What's being left unsaid is that the Sixers weren't really crazy about paying him a full max anyway.
Yeah.
So with that already in understanding, Harden worked with the situation to make him and the team get into a comfortable position.
So, Woj, is the idea here with Harden that we're going to see a deal come through for him for maybe a little less than the max years, a lot less than the max dollars?
Yeah, listen, it could be significantly less than annually than that 47 he just opted out of. And so they're going to have to figure out how, the years on a deal and obviously the numbers. But listen, James Harden's still going to walk away with a significant contract, a significant commitment from the Sixers. But as he's doing that, again, able to use that $10.5 million mid-level exception, that $4 million biannual, which is really going to open up the doors to some players who can really help the Sixers' depth. Certainly, one player, as Brian mentioned, that they're really targeting at that mid-level exception, PJ Tucker.
Yeah, I woke up with a good feeling about this because the one thing Philadelphia fans love is somebody who wants to be there, who's willing to sacrifice for the team. And I think when Harden came, there was this expectation that he would be this top 10 talent. That didn't happen. He was a very different player. And the fear was, Brian, that he would now be selfish and take that money and leave the Sixers in a lurch. He did the exact opposite. And I think for Philly today, there's a feeling of, hey, you know what? This guy not only wants to be here, but he actually wants to win a title here.
Right. It's one thing to average 22 points, 10 assists, and 7 rebounds and be felt like you're overpaid. It's another thing to have those same averages and feel like you're helping the team. His production is the same, but the narrative around him is different.
Yeah.
And in a place like Philadelphia, that's going to affect the way he lives day to day.
Yes.
He watched how it was viewed with Ben Simmons. So, okay, in a perfect world, he would have got the $200 million today, like some of his peers in the league are. There's going to be a bunch of guys in the next 24 to 48 hours signing for $200 million. Okay, he's not going to be one of them, but when he goes around in Philadelphia these next few months, it's going to feel different, and that's kind of what today is about. And by the way, there are a lot of guys who reached the situation and maybe should have thought about doing this and didn't.
Yeah.
So I think while this is also recognition that Harden's career is in a different spot, he should be at least acknowledged for recognizing it and taking action.
So when you talk about people in Philly and how they respond to things, or you talk about toughness, as Adrian said, PJ Tucker is the embodiment of that. Joel Embiid spent 2 minutes after they lost to Miami in Game 6 of the conference semifinals talking about how the Sixers have never had a guy exactly like PJ Tucker. You had him, potentially. You had DeAnthony Melton, who they got in a trade last week, who has all those qualities. Sixers fans are going to love that about this team as well.
And by the way, Harden was active in recruiting PJ Tucker. Not only structuring his contract to make money for him, they were teammates in Houston before. He was out there. Because, by the way, the Heat, and it's still not over, but the Heat wanted to keep PJ Tucker. Other teams wanted PJ Tucker. Other teams are bidding. So Harden, not only with his money, but also with recruiting, I think, is helping at this point.
I'm loving this. Woj, give us the final word on Harden. I can't tell you how good I feel this morning.
A guy who's reacting exactly how they want to
exactly. Woj, I'll give you the last word.
Yeah, and I think, a part of this is James Harden's relationship with Daryl Morey, the Sixers president. Obviously, they were together in Houston. He was hell-bent on acquiring James Harden. He finally did it prior to the trade deadline. And Tad Brown, who's essentially the CEO in Philadelphia, he was also in Houston with James Harden. So I do think those relationships, and I think the trust level among them has been helpful as James Harden has had to navigate this free agency decision.
I can't say I was a Harden fan after the end of the playoffs. I am definitely one now. Okay, Woj, let's go around the league on some other big free agency news.
Pay cut. He could open the space to sign PJ Tucker.
I know in his conversations with the team, that was really important. How can we get this team better? How can we improve our supporting cast?
Keyshawn, J. Will, and Max Allen Hunt in for Max. We are presented by Progressive Insurance. NBA free agency starts 6 p.m. Eastern today. And one name now suddenly on the list of free agents is James Harden after he declines his $47 million option. To discuss this and more, we bring in Brian Windhorst, our ESPN NBA insider. Wendy, how we doing?
Wendy.
So
Wendy gets a chance.
How important is Harden declining this option for the Sixers? You talked about it a bit yesterday. Go a little bit deeper with us now.
Yeah, I mean, just keep in mind that a year ago he turned down a $200 million extension. When he when he got traded, they wanted him to opt into this contract. The Sixers wanted as part of this trade for him to opt into that contract. And different people